The mall had been closed for hours, its single parking lot swallowed by fog and pine shadows from the surrounding hills. Inside the security room, a German shepherd named Rook sat perfectly still, muscles locked, eyes fixed on a dark corner beneath a row of inactive monitors. He had refused food, refused commands, refused to leave. Deputy Caleb Hart had worked K9 long enough to know the difference between stubbornness and fear. This wasn't either. Rook wasn't guarding the room. He was watching something. And whatever it was, it didn't exist on any camera feed. The town called it Pine Hollow Plaza, though there was nothing hollow about it and nothing resembling a plaza. One grocery store. A hardware shop that closed at 4. A pharmacy that still smelled like rubbing alcohol and old paper. The mall sat at the edge of town like a leftover promise from a better decade, pressed up against farmland and pine forest that crept closer every year. At 11:47 p.m., Deputy Caleb Hart stood in the mall security room with his leash looped around his wrist and a cold ache settling behind his eyes. "Rook," he said quietly. "Heel." The German shepherd didn't move. Rook sat squarely on the stained linoleum, tail low, ears forward, body angled toward the far left corner of the room. His eyes were locked on a stretch of shadow where the overhead light flickered and never quite reached. Not the wall. Not the door. The space between them. Caleb tried again. Firmer this time. "Rook." "Heel." The dog's ears twitched at the sound of his name, but his gaze never shifted. His breathing was slow, controlled, working dog calm, but the muscles along his shoulders were tight enough to show through his coat. Caleb swallowed. In 6 years together, Rook had ignored him exactly twice. Once during a flood rescue when a child was trapped under a collapsed porch. And once when Caleb himself had gone through the ice on Miller's Pond and Rook had refused to let anyone pull him away until Caleb was breathing again. This felt closer to the second. Caleb crouched and rested his forearm on his knee. The security room smelled faintly of burnt coffee and dust. Old equipment hummed. 14 monitors lined the wall, each showing empty hallways, locked storefronts, and one exterior feed of fog drifting across the lot like breath from the ground itself. Nothing unusual. Nothing moving. "What is it, boy?" Caleb murmured. Rook's lip lifted, just barely. A warning. Not aggression. Fear edged with certainty. Caleb followed the dog's line of sight. The corner held a metal filing cabinet, dented and half-rusted, and a mop bucket shoved behind it. The wall bore old scuff marks where chairs had scraped it over the years. No vents. No doors. No reason for attention. Caleb stood and took 2 steps forward. Rook let out a low sound, not a growl, not a bark. A vibration that came from deep in his chest. "Okay," Caleb said, backing up half a step. "Okay. I hear you." The mall's overnight security guard, Lena Morris, shifted behind him. She was in her late 40s, hair pulled tight, jacket zipped up despite the warmth of the room. She hadn't stopped rubbing her thumb against her ring since Rook had frozen like this. "He's been like that since you arrived?" Caleb asked without turning. "Since before," she said. "He wouldn't even look at me." Caleb glanced at her. "What do you mean, before?" Lena hesitated. The hum of the monitors seemed louder. "I called it in because the motion sensor tripped in hallway C," she said. "By the time I checked the feeds, it was clear. But when I came back in here, he was already staring." Caleb frowned. "You had Rook before I arrived?" She shook her head quickly. "No. I mean, when you brought him in. The moment you stepped through the door." That wasn't better. Caleb exhaled slowly and keyed his radio. "Dispatch, this is Hart. I'm at Pine Hollow Plaza. I need a status check on any recent calls, disturbances, or anything unusual in the area." A pause. "Static. Nothing on record," Dispatch replied. "You want backup?" Caleb looked at Rook. The dog hadn't blinked. "Not yet," Caleb said. "Stand by." He clipped the leash shorter and moved again toward the corner, this time sideways, careful not to break Rook's line of sight. As he stepped closer, the air felt wrong. Thicker. Like walking into a basement that had been closed too long. Caleb stopped a foot from the filing cabinet. "Lena," he said quietly, "has anyone been in here tonight? Maintenance? Vendors?" She shook her head. No one. Just me. Anyone recently fired? Her jaw tightened. Why? Just answer. She sighed. Evan Pike. Last month. Security trainee. Didn't work out. Caleb noted the way she said it. Didn't work out covered a lot of sins in small towns. He reached out and knocked his knuckles lightly against the metal cabinet. The sound echoed too long. Rook exploded. He surged forward, barking once, sharp, furious, and slammed to the end of the leash. Caleb barely held him back. Rook. Down. The dog didn't obey. His hackles were fully raised now, teeth bared toward empty air. Lena let out a small, broken sound. There's nothing there, she said. There's nothing there. Caleb wasn't so sure. He pulled Rook back, muscles straining, and forced him into a sit with practiced pressure. Rook complied only partially, still leaning forward, eyes burning into the corner like it might blink first. Caleb felt a prickle crawl up his spine. Dogs didn't react like this to ghosts. They reacted to scent, sound, pressure changes. Something physical. He crouched and pressed his palm flat against the wall. Cold. Too cold. He drew it back quickly and wiped his hand on his jeans. When was the last time anyone cleaned this room? He asked. Lena shrugged. Couple weeks ago, maybe. Why? Caleb didn't answer. He stood, unholstered his flashlight, and swept the beam across the corner. The light bent strangely, swallowed by shadow where it should have reflected. Caleb took another step. Behind him, Rook went silent. That was worse. Caleb's breath fogged faintly now. He hadn't noticed the temperature drop, but it was undeniable. The hum of the monitors faltered, screens flickering for a fraction of a second. And then Caleb saw it. Not something. An absence. A place where the wall didn't quite align with itself. Like a bad seam. Like a door that had been painted over too many times. Caleb reached out again, slower this time, and pressed. The wall shifted. Metal clicked softly beneath drywall. A false panel, he muttered. Lena stepped forward. That's impossible. That wall's original. Caleb braced his shoulder and pushed. The panel slid open with a tired groan, releasing a breath of air that smelled like damp earth and old electricity. Rook lunged again, whining now, torn between warning and desperation. The space behind the wall was narrow. A maintenance crawl space, maybe. Unlit. Too clean for something unused. Caleb angled his flashlight inside. The beam caught a pair of shoes first. Men's sneakers. Mud-caked. Laced tight. Then a phone. Then a smear on the concrete that was too dark to be dirt. Lena covered her mouth. Caleb's pulse thundered in his ears as he leaned closer. From deeper in the crawlspace came a sound. A slow, uneven breath. Caleb stepped back and drew his weapon. "Sheriff's Department," he called out. "If you can hear me, make a sound." The breathing stopped. Rook let out a broken whine that sounded almost like grief. Caleb knew then, before backup arrived, before the crawlspace was fully searched, that this room had been holding its breath for weeks. And whatever Rook had been watching wasn't the man inside. It was the space around him. The first cruiser arrived 12 minutes later, its headlights cutting through the fog like blades that didn't quite reach the bone of the night. By then, the mall no longer felt abandoned. It felt occupied. Caleb stood just outside the security room, Rook pressed close to his leg, every sense dialed past sharp. The false panel remained open behind them, a dark mouth in the wall that refused to close, as if sealing it again would be an insult. Lena Morris sat on the floor near the vending machines, arms wrapped around herself, eyes fixed on nothing. She hadn't spoken since the breathing stopped. "Don't let her back in," Caleb had told her gently, meaning the room. Meaning whatever had been watching. Sheriff Tom Alder ducked under the yellow tape and approached, boots echoing on tile that hadn't heard urgency in years. He was a broad man with a weathered face and the look of someone who had learned to survive by not asking certain questions. "What do we have?" Tom asked. Caleb didn't answer immediately. He watched Rook instead. The dog's ears were forward, but his body was angled away from the open panel now, as if proximity was a negotiation he'd already lost once. "There's a crawlspace behind the security room wall," Caleb said finally. Someone's been in there. Possibly still alive. Or was. Tom followed his gaze. His jaw tightened. Maintenance plans don't show anything back there. They wouldn't, Caleb said. Tom glanced at Rook. Your dog okay? No, Caleb said. But he's right. They entered together. The crawlspace was barely 4 feet wide, concrete floor sloping downward at a shallow angle that made the beam of Caleb's flashlight feel inadequate. The air inside carried a layered smell, old insulation, stagnant water, copper tang. Blood. They moved slowly. Tom kept his hand near his sidearm but didn't draw it yet. Experience told him this wasn't a man waiting to ambush them. 10 feet in, they found the body. Evan Pike lay on his side, knees drawn toward his chest like he'd tried to fold himself small enough to disappear. His skin had taken on the waxy gray tone of someone who had run out of time days ago. His eyes were open. No visible wounds. No signs of a struggle. "What the hell?" Tom muttered. Caleb crouched and checked for a pulse he knew wouldn't be there. The cold had already claimed him. "What killed him?" Tom asked. Caleb shook his head. "Not sure yet." Rook let out a low whimper behind them, refusing to cross the threshold. The coroner would later list the cause of death as hypothermia complicated by cardiac arrhythmia. But standing there, Caleb knew that explanation would never be enough. They sealed the mall before dawn. By morning, Pine Hollow buzzed in that quiet, restrained way small towns do when something is wrong but no one wants to say it out loud. The grocery store conversations lingered half a second too long. The bar opened an hour earlier than usual. The sheriff's office fielded calls from people who just had a feeling something bad was coming. Caleb didn't sleep. He sat at his kitchen table with Rook at his feet, the dog restless now, pacing from room to room as if the walls of the house had lost their honesty. At 6:18 a.m., Caleb's phone rang. "Sheriff wants you in," dispatch said. "Now." The sheriff's office smelled like old coffee and paper. Tom Alder stood over the central table, crime scene photos spread out in front of him. Lena Morris sat across from him, eyes red, hands clenched so tightly her knuckles had gone pale. Caleb took the empty chair beside her. "I didn't know," Lena said before anyone spoke. "I swear to God, I didn't know he was back there." Tom held up a hand. "We're just asking questions." Caleb leaned forward. "Evan Pike. Why was he fired?" Lena swallowed. "He had issues." "Define issues," Tom said. "He was late. He argued. He said things." "What kind of things?" Caleb pressed. Lena hesitated. "Too long. He said the mall was wrong," she said quietly. "That it wasn't built right. That it made him feel watched." Tom exchanged a look with Caleb. "Did he report anything specific?" Tom asked. "No. Just feelings." Caleb exhaled slowly. "Did you ever go back there with him?" "The security room wall." Lena's eyes flicked up sharply. "No. It was a lie. A small one, maybe, but practiced." Tom leaned back. "Lena, this isn't a town where people disappear without someone noticing." Her voice broke. "I didn't think he'd die." That was enough. After she left, Tom closed the door and rubbed his face. "This is already getting away from us." Caleb nodded. "Evan didn't die back there because he got cold." Tom looked at him sharply. "You saying murder?" "I'm saying something scared him into hiding. Something kept him there." Tom sighed. "Caleb, you know how this sounds." Caleb thought of Rook, of the way his dog had refused to cross into that space. Of the way the air had felt heavier, wrong. "I know," Caleb said. "But you asked why I trust my dog. This is why." That afternoon, the building inspector arrived. He was a thin man with an expensive jacket and an air of impatience that suggested he already knew how this would go. "No unregistered spaces," he said. "Mall's been inspected multiple times." Caleb walked him to the security room. The false panel was closed now, but it didn't sit right anymore. Once you knew where to look, the lie was obvious. The inspector frowned. "That's not original." He pried it open. Behind it, the crawlspace yawned again. That shouldn't be there, the inspector said. Why? Caleb asked. Because the original plans show a utility corridor that was never completed, the man said. They sealed it during construction. Caleb felt his stomach sink. Why seal it? The inspector shrugged. Budget issues. Structural concerns. Structural concerns like what? The man hesitated. Ground instability. Sinkholes. Old mine shafts. Caleb stiffened. Mines. This town was built on coal and copper, the inspector said. Most people forget that. Not Rook, Caleb thought. They went deeper. Past where Evan Pike had died, the crawlspace widened into something else. Something unfinished. Concrete gave way to raw earth. Support beams stood like ribs, some warped, some cracked. And there, scratched into the dirt wall with something sharp, were marks. Not symbols. Not words. Tallies. Dozens of them. Caleb traced them with his light. Counting days. The inspector nodded slowly. Or nights. Further in, they found a folding chair. A thermos. A blanket folded neatly, as if order could keep the dark from leaning too close. Evan hadn't just hidden there. He had lived there. Why would someone choose this? Tom asked quietly when he arrived later. Caleb didn't answer. That night, Rook woke Caleb from a dead sleep. The dog stood rigid at the bedroom door, staring down the hallway. Caleb's heart began to race. Rook, he whispered. What is it? The dog didn't move. Caleb reached for his gun and stood slowly. The house was silent. Too silent. Even the refrigerator hum felt distant. He stepped into the hallway. Cold air brushed his bare feet. From the far end of the house, near the back door, came the faintest sound. Breathing. Caleb raised his weapon. Who's there? He called. The sound stopped. Then, softly, unmistakably, a knock. Not on the door. On the wall. 3 taps. Rook growled. Caleb backed up, pulse pounding, and flipped on the lights. The hallway flooded with warmth and normalcy. The sound didn't come again. But the wall, behind the coat rack, was cold to the touch. The next day, the mayor called. He wanted the investigation closed quickly. An accident. An unfortunate trespass. The mall was already struggling. We don't need rumors, the mayor said. People get scared, businesses suffer. Tom agreed too easily. Caleb noticed. You're pushing this, Caleb said after the call ended. Tom didn't look at him. I'm protecting the town. From what? Caleb asked. Tom finally met his eyes. From itself. That evening, Caleb went back to the mall alone. He didn't tell Tom. He brought Rook. The fog had returned, thicker now, wrapping the building in something that felt intentional. The parking lot lights flickered as they approached. Inside, the mall smelled wrong again. Rook stopped at the security room door. Caleb opened it. The monitors were on. They hadn't been when they left. Each screen showed the same image. The security room. From impossible angles. From inside the walls. From beneath the floor. Caleb's breath caught. On one screen, he saw himself standing in the doorway. On another, he saw Rook. And on the last, a dark shape standing just behind them. Rook barked, furious, desperate. The screens went black. The wall behind the monitors knocked once. Slow. Deliberate. Caleb realized then what Evan Pike had learned too late. The mall wasn't empty. It was listening. Caleb did not run. That fact would matter later, though no one would say it out loud. When the screens went black and the knock echoed from inside the wall, every instinct screamed at him to pull Rook back, to retreat into the open air, to pretend this was just another bad call that could be filed under unexplained and forgotten by morning. Instead, Caleb stood his ground. Rook strained at the leash, barking again, not in fear now, but warning layered with urgency. The dog's paws scraped the tile, nails clicking like a countdown. Easy, Caleb whispered, though his own voice trembled. I've got you. The mall lights flickered, then steadied. The hum returned. The ordinary sounds of a building pretending to be empty filled the silence. Caleb approached the wall. Up close, The monitors smelled faintly of ozone. His reflection stared back at him from the dark glass, older than he remembered, eyes hollowed by years of scenes that never fully left him. He raised his knuckles and knocked once. The sound died too quickly. Nothing answered. Rook whined. Caleb reached for the false panel. Before his fingers touched it, his radio crackled. Hart. Tom Alder's voice. Where are you? Caleb closed his eyes for a second. The relief surprised him, and the disappointment followed close behind. At the mall, Caleb said. You need to get here. A pause. Static hissed. No, Tom said. You need to leave. Now. Caleb opened the panel. Cold air spilled out, stronger than before, carrying that same layered scent, earth, rust, something older that didn't have a word attached to it. Why? Caleb asked quietly. Tom's voice lowered. Because this doesn't end the way you think it does. Caleb stepped inside. The crawlspace felt different now. Wider. As if the boundaries had loosened the moment the monitors went dark. The beam of his flashlight revealed new marks on the dirt walls, fresh tallies, carved deep and angry. One more than before. Rook refused to follow. The dog planted himself at the threshold, body shaking, eyes fixed on Caleb with something dangerously close to pleading. It's okay, Caleb said, though he knew it wasn't. Stay. Rook barked once, sharp and broken. Caleb moved forward alone. The space opened again into the unfinished corridor, but something had changed. The air pressed down harder. The support beams groaned softly, not with strain, but with awareness. Caleb felt it then. Not a presence. A pressure. Like standing too close to a living thing that didn't recognize him as human. Evan, Caleb said, voice steady. If you're here, I'm listening. The flashlight flickered. From somewhere deeper in the earth came a sound, not breathing this time, but movement. Slow. Careful. As if something was adjusting itself to be seen. Caleb followed the tallies to their end. There, etched deeper than the rest, was a name. Lena. Below it, another. Tom. Caleb's stomach dropped. A memory surfaced uninvited, Lena's hesitation in the office. Tom's eagerness to close the case. The way both of them had spoken about the mall as if it were a problem best managed, not understood. The ground beneath Caleb's feet shifted. Not collapsing, settling. The flashlight beam caught a shape ahead. A person. Caleb raised his weapon, then froze. It wasn't Evan Pike. The man standing there wore a sheriff's jacket. Tom. You shouldn't be here, Tom said softly. Caleb's heart pounded. You knew. Tom nodded once. I hoped you wouldn't figure it out. You sealed that corridor, Caleb said. You left him. I saved the town, Tom replied. Again. Caleb laughed once, humorless. You think this is saving? Tom stepped closer. The air around him felt wrong, thinner, stretched. It started years ago, Tom said. Before you transferred here. During the expansion. They dug too deep. Broke into something old. Something that wasn't meant to be exposed. Caleb listened, the way you listen when you already know the ending won't change. The building started, changing people, Tom continued. Night guards hearing things. Workers refusing to go into certain sections. We sealed what we could. And when that wasn't enough, we fed it time, Tom said. Routine. Silence. Neglect. Caleb's voice was low. Evan found it. He listened to it, Tom said. That was the mistake. You let him die. Tom's jaw tightened. He wouldn't leave. Said the walls were talking. Said they needed company. The ground shifted again. The beams groaned. You betrayed him, Caleb said. And Lena. Tom hesitated. She helped, he admitted. At first. Until it started knocking back. A sound echoed through the space then, a deep, resonant knock that vibrated in Caleb's chest. Tom flinched. You hear that? Tom whispered. It wants balance. Caleb lowered his gun slightly. It doesn't want balance. It wants witnesses. The air thickened. From the walls, faint impressions began to form. Not shapes, not bodies, but memories. Smudges of movement. Footsteps where no feet stood. The echo of voices layered over one another, whispering fragments of nights spent alone. Caleb understood then. The mall wasn't alive. It was full. Full of people who had stayed too long. Who had listened. Who had been forgotten. "You promised it someone new," Caleb said. Tom's silence was answer enough. Behind them, Rook barked, furious, desperate, echoing down the corridor like a lifeline thrown into dark water. Caleb stepped back. "No," Tom said sharply. "If you leave, it follows." Caleb shook his head. "It doesn't follow. It waits." Tom's eyes darted to the walls. "You don't know that." "I do," Caleb said. "Because it's been waiting for you." The ground buckled. Not violently, decisively. The tallies on the wall began to blur, then sink inward, as if being erased from the wrong side. Tom stumbled. "Caleb!" Caleb grabbed his arm, pulling him back. For a moment, the pressure eased. Then the knocking came again. Faster now. Insistent. The space behind Tom darkened, depth stretching impossibly far. "You can still leave," Caleb said. "Tell the truth." Tom looked at the darkness. Then at Caleb. "I already chose," he said. He stepped back. The floor gave way silently, swallowing him without a sound. The darkness folded in on itself. The pressure lifted. Caleb fell to his knees, gasping, the flashlight rolling from his hand. The corridor shrank, walls settling back into their earlier shapes, as if nothing extraordinary had happened. When Caleb staggered out of the crawlspace, Rook was waiting. The dog pressed against him, solid and warm and real. Dawn broke over Pine Hollow without drama. The mall was closed indefinitely. The official report cited structural failure, undisclosed corruption, and a long-overdue investigation into misuse of authority. Lena Morris resigned and left town quietly. No one followed her. The false wall was sealed again, this time properly. Concrete poured deep, reinforced with steel. Still, the town did not demolish the mall. Some places, they learned, resisted erasure. Caleb transferred 6 months later. Before he left, he walked Rook past the building one last time. The fog did not appear. The walls were silent. Almost. As they turned away, Caleb felt, not heard, a familiar pressure. Not a knock. A pause. Rook glanced back once, ears twitching. Then he kept walking. Some spaces remember. But they do not always get to choose who stays.